Hi and welcome to Women in Business. I'm Jackie Campbell, as you know from Arkham Marai. Now, we're joined today by one of my favourite business besties on the planet. Her name's Cat Matson. Now, normally I would do the whole superstar introduction because it helps settle people down and does all of those things. But Cat is a veteran of the field. I mean to say she's old, but a veteran of this world. She 100 plus of her own podcasts, guesting on so many other podcasts. And as a rare gift, she can introduce herself far better than I ever could. Cat, welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. That's a pretty epic intro for somebody who's not giving me a superhero intro. That was pretty cool. You want me to intro me now, don't you?
Absolutely.
You want me to,
I mean, this is your star thing, this earn the right that you do teach and perform so well. You know a little bit about our audience. You know we're live on the internet, which means we've got to be a little bit more liberal about what we can say. So
awesome.
Go, girl.
Well, I'm Cat, Cat Matson, that is, and my business is Impactful Presenters. And I work with business owners and community leaders who want to make an impact, but sometimes they ramble. Maybe they lose their words. They talk in circles, or they think out loud, or worse, they get so excited that they've got an opportunity to talk to their audience that they drown their audience in all of their things. I work with those people who suffer from those afflictions to help them speak with authority, with confidence, with authenticity, and with impact, so they can make the impact and the dent that they want to make in their worlds. I do this through my online programs as well as some one-on-one coaching, and it's pretty cool to be called your business bestie, Jackie, because you're a massive storyteller as well. So, you know, I feel like we're on the same page.
Now, Kat's based all the way across in Brisbane, unlike me, who's based in Perth. But the great thing about internet-based radio and just audio content in general, I think, is that we can step out there beyond, you know, the people we can cuddle and have that interaction, those conversations, just that, what do you call it? Just that, you should shoot me for being saying now.
Just connect.
Just connect with people who are not necessarily in our backyard. That's why I love it as a platform. Now, you spend a lot of time actually live, Kat, like physically standing on the stage, both in past lives and obviously in current lives. What's the power of that? I mean, that, to be honest, scares the crap out of most people.
It does, doesn't it? I love a stage. Oh my goodness. Give me a stage, give me a microphone, and I'm a pretty happy camper. And look, and I acknowledge that is relatively unusual. I think part of why I'm so comfortable on a stage is I have a pretty high tolerance level for making an idiot of myself. Interestingly enough, though, not an idiot in terms of my content. You know, I would be horrified if I felt like I looked stupid in terms of my content. But, you know, I was debating in school. I was debating since year 8, and I distinctly remember actually being third speaker negative, which is awesome because you don't have to prepare. You just have to rock up.
Absolutely.
And you argue. I'm really good at arguing. Always was, as my parents would tell you. And the topic was something about patriotism, and I decided that I would sing the first couple of bars of the national anthem. That was fine to open, and I remembered to stop. And then I'd decided that I would sing the same 2 opening bars to close. I forgot to stop. And I went onto autopilot, and I sang through the entire first verse of Advance Australia Fair. And, you know, and that was in year 8 or year 9. So I've always been okay with that part. What I love about being on a stage is you can create impact at scale. You can take what you would normally say one-on-one and you can facilitate an entire room. And I think one of the reasons why people don't like speaking on massive stages is because they feel like it's not as intimate, it's not as conversational. But actually, once you know how, it is just as intimate and it is just as conversational. You have different feedback loops. I can't sit there and have a conversation with every single individual member of a 1,000 person audience, but I can have the same impact. and I can have that impact at scale because I'm talking to 1,000 people instead of one. So that's why I love it. I often joke that perhaps I should have been a singer, perhaps I should have been a rock star, but it's really hard to make money in the music industry, and it's less hard to make money speaking.
That though, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's less hard to make money speaking. Of course, you can speak for two different reasons. You can, one, about getting your brand out there, becoming known as a leader in your niche, and all of the things which go with that. So that's not necessarily a fee for speaking. But I know there's rules around. You have some very strong rules around this, and I have adopted these myself. So what's the two things about speaking on a stage? Rules for business owners for speaking on a stage.
Show up. No, when you've got as a business owner, when you have been given the opportunity to take a stage, whether it's a stage of 5 people or 20 at a networking function or bigger, take the opportunity. Those opportunities are priceless when it comes to building your profile, and you don't get those opportunities all the time. And even, you can do a Facebook Live, or you can do a radio show, or you can do all those things, and they're all awesome, but there is nothing like taking the stage as a business owner to talk about your business. The rule that I suspect you're talking about, though, is that you need to add value while also demonstrating your business value. So I talk about how do you be of service to your audience at the same time as showcasing the value that you can bring. So right back at the beginning when you asked me to introduce myself, I was very clear how I can help you by letting you know how good I am. and we can bump into, but I don't want to boast. It's not boasting if it's true. And if you're in business, you have something to offer, you have something to sell, you are solving somebody's problem. So own that and take your place on a stage.
Absolutely. And I know there's also some guidelines around which you put out there is you've got two opportunities. When you're on stage, obviously prepare well, get organised, and we'll talk about a little bit about that in a minute. But the hard and fast rule a lot of people go is, hang on a minute, but if I invite someone to stand on my stage, you're going to sell your stuff. I don't want you to sell your stuff from my stage. But you can do it in a different way. It's not sales. Let's be clear. Standing and being you, talking about what you do, who you can help, and how you can help these individuals, the problems that you're solving, is not the same as saying, do you want to buy a car? I mean,
yeah.
It's that space. Sales is different than turning up and being you. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting balance between that invitation that we often accept to not sell. We tell ourselves that, well, if I just show up and if I'm just me and if I just offer enough value, then enough people will turn around at the end and say, oh, I want to work with Cat. But you've got to give them something to start that next conversation with. If I rock up and tell you everything I know about speaking with confidence, authority, authenticity, and with impact, and I teach you everything that I would teach in my paid programs for free, and then I kind of wrap up at the end and say, thanks, it's been great to be here today. If you've got any further questions or if you'd like to enter my program, then please come and talk to me afterwards. There's nowhere for people to go. There's no reason. And you can set up your content in a way that lets people know how much value you have just added, how much more value you could add, and then with a really clear offer at the end that says, come and join me for a free discovery call. Come and join me in my free workshop series. Head to my website where you'll see an opportunity to book in a time. Like, you just need to be clear. And no, that's not selling. No, that's not pressuring. And when people say don't sell, it's because we've got our wires crossed that every sales conversation is going to be a sleazy used car salesman. And it's not. It's not. And no one here listening to this conversation is one of those people, because they wouldn't be listening to these conversations.
True. And I find it's always an interesting balance, because if you don't make an offer of some description, an invitation to come and join me in my world, to come and share with some of my knowledge, because I learn from you as much as you learn from me, when we have any of these conversations. If you don't create those opportunities, then how on earth can you possibly run a business? All you're doing is swapping energy. I'm going to take some of what I know to solve some of your problem. I mean, if we were sitting there and I was dying of thirst and you had water, keep it as simple as that. You're not going to go, oh goodness, I'm not going to give Cat any of my water because she might think I'm trying to sell it to her. It's like, dude, you're thirsty. I can fix that. Can I help? Would you like a help with that? And it can be just as easy as, can I help with that? Would you like some help with that?
Exactly. And yeah, that's why my thing is always, how do I be of service? And it's also a masterful way of calming your nerves too, for the people who don't like speaking and get really nervous. You focus on, how do I be of service? How do I help? How do I add value to my audience, rather than focusing on, I need to tell them all of the things that I'm really good at.
I really deserve to be here. I really, really do. I really, really do. I really know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
So you did that beautifully at the beginning. And this is a bit of a technique that you use. Are you happy to share that with us before we go to a break?
Yeah, sure. So it's a 3-part process. It's what I call your earn the right. Now, the process gets used both as an introduction, but it's also a platform that helps you own your own authority across the board. So the first part is your name. Now, the reason that's actually included is, one, it's important that people know who they're talking to, but even if you are petrified, you can remember your name. And so as you say your name...
Most of the time. Got it. Most of the time.
Well, unless you're inebriated and nervous, that's possibly different. But you can remember your name. And just that process of saying out loud something that you know starts to kick your brain into gear that this is okay, we're safe, there's no need to be nervous. So the name. The second part is what you do and possibly why you do it. Now, I didn't do that. I didn't do the why. I just said my business is Impactful Presenters. Then the third part is the where does that sit in that place of problem, people, and what you actually do? So that notion of, I articulated the business owners and the community leaders, the problem that they're facing, they lose their words, they ramble, etc., and then how I help. And then the third part that you can either put into that earn the right piece or you sprinkle throughout your conversation is what I call your brag bag stories. And your brag bag stories are simply those stories that come from your history, not other people's. It's not social proof. It's not testimonials. They're your stories that contribute to who you are now today. So I've already shared one about debating and singing the national anthem. That's a brag bag story that demonstrates how I got to be okay with embarrassing myself on a stage.
And as you say, there's a big difference between embarrassing yourself, as in, I'm actually really comfortable in this space and I can be a bit of a twit, but don't doubt what I say.
Correct.
And just making stuff up as you go along. Now, what is interesting is this making stuff up stuff, and I know this is possibly a tender point for you, and we're just about to go for a quick break, but I'm going to throw it out there, is surely we don't need to make stuff up anymore. Surely we don't need to have our own stories, because we've got ChatGPT for that. Oh, look at the face.
We need to go to a break before I go down that path. We'll do that after the break.
Absolutely. I must admit, I absolutely love bringing the Women in Business show to you all. We have these great conversations with people, but you can't do these things alone, much like so much in small business. Going it alone, like the old African proverb says, you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. And as a result, we've partnered with Lance Hall from eBats Accounting. Now, Lance, I use him personally. He's absolutely awesome. He's definitely your better business accountant. If you're looking for someone you can actually have those conversations with, sometimes those uncomfortable conversations that you just think, oh, geez, I actually haven't had my best year ever. But I don't want anyone to judge me on that. Or you're going, you know what, actually, I've had an awesome year and I'd love to know what comes next. Lance is absolutely the best person to have that conversation with. So if you want to catch up with him, book that free consultation. You can do that by going to www.ebats.au. There's a page there. Select new business. Tell Lance that we sent you, so that Women in Business sent you, or Jackie sent you, One of the two, he'll get the message, he'll give you great service, and you can see where that goes from there. So welcome back. Hopefully that was a great little break. You managed to grab a cup of tea and get organised, ready for what I can only imagine is going to be a bit of a wrestle. Now, we threw in there that surely we don't need to turn up as ourselves anymore because we have these amazing AI language models. Can't we just write me a speech about and then learn it? Wouldn't that be easy? Look at your face, Cat. Okay, everybody, and go.
No is the answer. No.
But why not? I mean, this thing learns everything. It knows everything about us now. Can't we just go, I'm an awesome marketer, or can you just tell me what to say here?
Yeah, look, there's so many layers to this that I want to unpack. You can use ChatGPT or any of those other generative AI tools to, I don't know, get over writer's block, to give you some ideas, to get a better understanding of what other people might talk about. However, and here's the thing, if you can do that, then so can everybody else. And if you can say, write me a speech about Marketing 101, then so can your listener. If you think that the value you're bringing to your audience, whoever your audience is the content, and I mean the information that is Googleable, then you're misunderstanding and you're misinterpreting the value that you bring to the world. We don't live in an information age anymore. In fact, our problem is that we have too much information. We live in a navigation world. We live in a world where people who can wayfind, who can interpret, who can apply, who can help us navigate our personal circumstances or our professional circumstances with the information, with the knowledge, with the context. And so I'm convinced that in an age where AI and algorithms are quite literally homogenizing everything, I'm convinced that what will be a competitive advantage from now, it's not even moving forward. What is a competitive advantage is personality, is authenticity, is relatability. I talk a lot about you need to not only show that you know your information, but you also need to show that you've got the warts and all experience, been there, done that, got the T-shirt, ask me how I know, because people want to know, not that you've got war wounds, not that you've got deep scars. That's not what I mean. People want to know that you can help them in their context. And they also want to know that you're human, because I don't know about you, but I can't, a robot's not going to help me. A robot of any kind is not going to help me unless it's to vacuum the floor. If it's... That'd be awesome, actually. But for most of us, most people listening, if you're in business because you either make things for people or you make sense of things for people. And so, yeah, plugging something into AI and say, write me a speech is like a surefire way to boring your audience to death, completely betraying your own sense of self, to be flaky about it, and is a really fast way to the bottom. So, yeah, okay, off the soapbox now. But that's why I'm not a fan.
Really. I'm wondering though, as you're talking, I'm sitting there thinking that through, is what are your thoughts along the lines of, have we grabbed hold of ChatGPT and all the spin-offs of that, which really hasn't existed even a year yet? Have we grabbed that with both hands so adamantly because that's our imposter syndrome kicking in? That whole, I don't think people will want to hear from me. I'm not clever enough. I shouldn't be here. And so I'm going to go somewhere to find out more.
Yeah, I think that can be the temptation. And again, when I talk to people about imposter syndrome, I often ask the question, who would you consider to be the world's foremost nature documentary expert? And people will either say, they'll say David Attenborough, or I had a really good example today that's completely left my mind, the woman who Gorillas in the Mist was based on. Anyway, I've lost the name.
Oh, yes, I can see her face.
I know.
That's terrible.
Goodall. Anyway.
Goodall, Jane Goodall.
Thank you. I knew it was a J. It was all the J sounds.
And isn't it interesting, as women in business, we can remember David, but not Jane.
Don't start me. Don't start me.
No, we'll leave that out.
So if David Attenborough is considered the preeminent expert in nature documentaries, if I was to ask him, who does he consider to be the expert in nature documentaries, he would cite at least 10 people that he works with. He wouldn't cite himself.
It would be David Bellamy. It would be, the rest of the voices from our youth.
And it's not because he's humble. It's because no one person is the expert. But when we end up finding ourselves in that place of imposter syndrome, the mistake that we've made is thinking that we need to compete by comparing ourselves. We think that we need to be better than everybody else in order to show up. Actually, we don't need to be better. We just need to be a little bit different. A little bit different. We don't even need to be crazy, quirky, or over the top, we just need to be us. Because the more us we are, the more authentic we are, the more we'll find the people who go, oh, I like her, and at the same time go, oh, I don't like her. I want to repel the people who aren't going to like me, and I want to do that really quickly so I don't have to deal.
Yes, I mean, isn't that the point of us running small businesses? Our business, our way, on our terms, which means we don't have to take the meetings with the people we don't like. We don't have to turn up and serve people that we don't want to.
Correct. And so when we bump into that imposter syndrome, all we're telling ourselves is that we don't know enough. It's not that we don't know enough. People don't want to know. They're not coming to us for the information. They're coming to us for the wayfinding. They're coming to us for the navigation. They're coming to us for our opinions. If they were coming to us for the information, seriously, they would Google it, because the information is all there. Yeah. It's not what it's about. We are not meant to be walking encyclopedias.
So you talked about your brag bag stories, which I know is a fabulous thing that you love, and I have a cart around a bag of mine as well. Purely, and they're so useful, because when you're trying to explain something, particularly when you're trying to explain something a slightly different way, you can give someone an example, which does a couple of things. One, it helps clarify, but also it gives you the street cred that you need to perhaps continue that conversation.
Correct. And you can use different brag bag stories for different people as well. You know that a different story will resonate with a politician that you're trying to influence versus a team member.
Absolutely. So you collect these as you go along. So obviously neither one of us are brand new to the world. We've done a few laps. So, and then we do collect them along the way. And I think when we start to talk, as you were saying just before, that you need to match that story with that audience. But as you collect them, where are these coming from in your world, Kat? I mean, obviously you've been around for a while, not too long, but around for a while. We'll just leave that there, shall we? Moving on. It's not like we're brand new to this, but you don't want to sound like you've been here a million years. Oh, back in my day, we walked 43 miles to school in the snow. Where do your stories come from?
They come from life. And I do mean that quite legitimately. So, my first brag bag story that I've shared in this interview came from year 9 at school. I have stories from every single job or business that I've run. I've got brag bag stories from conversations that I've had with friends. I've got brag bag stories from community work that I've done. I've got some great stories about advocating for the football team that I was the manager for. We were the bottom kind of team, and the club kept pinching our players, and so we kept staying on the bottom of the bloody draw because we were playing three boys down, because they kept asking the other, the kids to play up so they could field their Div 1 sides. I've got, your brag bag stories come from everywhere, and the key to finding the stories is to ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to demonstrate in my current context. So in my current role as running Impactful Presenters, I'm always looking for ways to demonstrate my expertise in influence, in communication, in what I call, changing the world one conversation at a time. I need to demonstrate often that, particularly in politics, which I've spent a bit of time in, that, it can take 4, 5, 6 years to land a message. And that's, you just have to be patient. You just have to keep saying the same thing over and over again. And I've got stories of how the Lord Mayor at the time finally started using my sound bites. And the moment that he started saying, just like Cat says, innovation is messy, I'm like, and we're done. My work here is done. That took 4 years. So people often think that their stories need to be, I don't know, big, epic Game of Thrones style Tolkien, epic. They don't. They're literal, they're snippets where you did something, achieved something, made a fool of yourself, won, didn't win, learnt, and you can use that story and you can tell that story in a way that demonstrates why you do what you do now or how it is that you do what you do now.
Well, it does sound, with the stories that you shared and some of the other stories that I know from your world, it does sound like it's all been smooth sailing. That it's all just been, doors have opened and you've gracefully wafted through and gone, ta-da, you've turned up and you said, thank you so much.
Easy.
I'd love that opportunity too. That's just amazing. I can see your glow from here.
Look, I don't like using the word luck because you do create your own luck. I feel incredibly privileged. I feel like I've had a life where, one of my hashtags on social media for a very long time was called Charmed Life. I have been in the right places, or I have put myself in the right places at the right time. And when I look back, I have a personal philosophy, I guess, that I look back at the highlights. I don't dwell on the lowlights, and I don't regret anything. That is one of my rules. I just don't regret anything. No, because seriously, the things that you would normally regret contributed to who you are. Don't get me wrong though, I've flogged myself. This is business number 5 or 6 for me. And interestingly, actually, I was just reflecting yesterday that I had this belief that says I'm not very good at business. I can't make a highly successful business. And so as I was pulling that apart, I was like, well, what do you think is highly successful? And 2, why do you think that? And it went back to the kind of 3 key businesses that I started before I went into the public sector failed. Now, on reflection, they didn't fail. I just didn't stick them out long enough. I had some bad advice. I was in a very bad relationship that contaminated not only my confidence but also how I ran the businesses. I can look at key moments now in those businesses where I made the decision that I knew was wrong but somebody else was telling me to make, and that's what contributed to them not working. And so I was kind of like, well, hang on a second. All of that is a false story. None of that's actually real. It's quite literally a construct that has embedded itself in my mind. And then I started pulling apart, well, what does success look like? And, I cracked myself up, Jackie, because I looked at it and I went, oh, it's called money in the bank and knowing that you're okay for 6 months. And I'm sitting here right now going, I know I'm okay for 6 months. So I was like, okay, we're all right. So, yeah, I mean, it looks sweet, and that's because that's what I focus on, I guess. But, yeah, running your own business is freaking hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't always go to plan. And it's interesting to hear you say that I took some bad advice, or there was bad advice given, and because of where I was, I chose to take that. And it is a choice. Yep. But I think that also speaks to a lot of us when we are, particularly women working in business, is that we do have that whole, okay, we'll come last. I'll get to this whenever. Let's, that's okay. And you add that to imposter syndrome, to a bit of this and a bit of that, and you end up with, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. So I'll I'll take whatever somebody tells me to do next. I'll just do.
Yeah. Yeah. If I was to acknowledge publicly on a radio show with you right now, one of the things that I really did bump into yesterday was realizing that I had become very codependent on other people's advice. There is a part of it's being a woman, part of it's being a younger woman, part of it's just how you grow up, I think. But I realise that one of the things that I am currently now working on is being completely okay with making my own decisions and then living or dying by the consequences of those decisions, but not waiting for somebody else to say this is what you should do or this is, So,
or that's okay. If you want to do that, that's okay. You have my approval to move forward with this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't have any of that anymore. It's mine. And so I have a chat with myself as I'm walking in the morning and I go, so what do you reckon we should do? What do you reckon? And I decide and then I move forward.
One of the things which I come back to a lot when I'm speaking of other coaching with my clients or with some of the work that I'm doing around unpacking those stories and helping people to step up and choose to be the face of their business, to be recognised as a confident leader in their niche, which can be a real challenge. It's like, oh no, I don't want to stand out. That's not the Australian way. I don't know what to say anyway. And we've talked about some obviously public speaking, and we'll touch on some of the other things after the next break. But it's that whole, we get in our heads, and this most powerful voice we ever hear is how we speak to ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And I adamantly think that that's one of the most dangerous voices because nobody else can hear it. And if nobody else can hear it, nobody else can grab you by the scruff of the collar and give you a slap up the side of the head and say, stop it. Because I sometimes catch myself, and I'm much, much better at it now, but not too long ago, probably a couple of years ago, I was in a space where I suddenly stopped, and I literally stopped when I was walking, and with that voice going on and on in my head, and I thought, if I heard anybody speaking to my children, to my friends, to anybody, even random strangers in the street, the way I am currently speaking to myself, I would slap them. This has to stop.
Yeah.
And that's that tension of those voices and how you move into a space where you go, actually, you know what? My business and my way, the rest of you can just bugger off. Yeah.
And our internal dialogue or our self-dialogue can be really damaging. And particularly as we get older, when we're first having that internal dialogue as a young person, it's kind of our parents' voices or our teachers' voices that we're hearing, but then we assimilate them all and it becomes our voice. And you're right, it then becomes really critical. And that voice can become very, very harsh. One of the other reasons that I talk about the Earn the Right as a platform rather than just an introduction is because particularly in a service-based business, which most of us are these days, if there's no physical evidence of where you've been, it can be hard to remember the value you've brought to your clients, to the world, etc. And so when somebody says, so tell me what you do, when you don't have those brag bag stories ready to go, you kind of go, oh, what do I do? I thought I was a website consultant. I thought I was a marketing consultant, but far out, I actually can't demonstrate that right now. And so one of the reasons why I talk about Earn the Right as a platform is because it gives you the outside voice to feed back into your internal dialogue that goes, oh, I do know what I'm doing. Yeah. I do add value.
And the next thing I think which comes back with that is I give myself permission to be here.
Correct.
I give myself permission to show up. I give myself permission to make that offer, to be of service, to do, all the things which need to come next to be successful in business, however we define that success.
Well, I'll take that one step further and even say when we have that internal dialogue playing in a way that supports us, we actually don't need permission. We just show up.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just here because I'm human. End story,
Awesome. Well,
we certainly don't need to wait for the permission.
Sorry, I cut you off. Waiting for permission, absolutely. So we'll grab a quick break, get some other stuff happening, refresh the brain and of our listeners who I'm sure are madly taking notes here, and then we'll come back. Now, it's really, really difficult to do a radio show such as Women in Business without fabulous sponsors. And this show is powered by Ignition app. They help you sell, bill, and get paid for your services, and they do it all in one place. So with Ignition, it's easy to engage with clients, engage with online proposals, engagement letters, automatic invoicing, payment collection, all of the things that go with actually the finance side of doing what you love to do. So the clients that you love to serve also love dealing with you because things are just simple, not complicated, even slightly. So you can start your free trial today with Ignition app, and they're offering you 50% off for 3 whole months on the Pro or the Scale plans. So if you'd like to have a chat with these guys, see what it's all about, zip down and have a look in the link below. Right, so welcome back. Here we are moving into segment number 3, which is fantastic. Hopefully you've chilled, you've got your tea, we've done that bit already, and we're back with Cat Matson, who, of course, has impactful presenters. Now, you may have taken a bunch of notes, hopefully not if you're driving, but you may have taken a bunch of notes here. And you can see all of the things and all of this wealth of knowledge that Cat has. Now, because, of course, there is also other rules for speaking. You can either pitch, you've got time to make the sales, or we pay you. Now, considering I'm not paying Cat, this would be her awesome moment in time because I know that she has a sneaky thing coming up. You might have heard her talk a little bit about a workshop that she's running. The free, it's over 4 days. I've done it. I am a repeat offender for this particular workshop. It's brilliant. But September this year, 16 to 22nd, if my memory serves me right, 23rd. Not even
19 to 23.
19th to the 23rd. It's the same week. It's fine.
Same, but different.
Same. Can you tell us a bit about this and how that's going to go into, and why the hell it's free?
Yeah, right. So why the hell it's free? One, because the reason I started, one of the reasons why I started Impactful Presenters was because having sat in the public sector for about 8 years, what I saw was the same old people sitting at the same old tables, having the same old conversations, making the same old decisions. And I was like, well, hang on a second, why is this? And when I watched it a little bit more closely, what I realised is it's because that's what sounds and looks familiar. It's actually not a malicious thing. It's a lazy thing and whatnot. And so one of the reasons why I created Impactful Presenters was to empower more diverse voices so they can be heard and be contributing to those proverbial decision-making tables so they can contribute to the conversations that matter. So why free? Because I don't want all of my content to be behind a paywall. Like, I want people to understand that speaking is a skill. It's not a talent. It is a skill that it can be learned. And once people understand that and once people have some wins, they can show up, they can do things, they can use their earn the right, they can participate in a better conversation. So that's why it's free. How it works is it takes place over 4 days. Lunchtime's my time. For your, for the West Coast, it's mid-morning. And they're short 30-minute sessions that take place every day over 4 days. Now, why 30 minutes over 4 days rather than just a 2-hour session? I don't know about you, Jackie, but I don't have 2 hours. I'm trying to find 2 hours in my life. It's like, whoa. But I can find half an hour. And even if I can't find 4 times half an hour, I can find 2 times half an hour and then I can watch the replays. And sneaky trick, you can watch the replays at 1.25 or 1.5 times speed. So, it becomes 15 minutes.
All this training you do with us to pause and to breathe, because, of course, you've got the other thing to remember is that if you don't breathe, neither does your audience.
No, that's
correct.
But
I must admit, we do have a couple of other people, mentors in our life who are American, who I do listen at twice the speed. Totally.
And sometimes when you are receiving information as distinct to studying it, you can receive that information kind of faster. It's a bit like speed reading, but listening. So the Speaking with Impact workshop series is entirely free. It's 4 half-hour sessions. And over the course of the 4 sessions, we look at things like how do you overcome your imposter syndrome? We dive deeper into the earn the right that we've just touched on today. We talk about, and I show you actually my framework for how to distill complex ideas into simple messages that your audience can understand. And I give you the entire blueprint for how to speak with impact every single time. Because as I said at the beginning, speaking is a skill. It's not a talent. People look at competent speakers and go, wow, I could never do that. Yeah, you actually can. You can. Because how I know you can is because you currently speak. And
Yes.
if you can speak, then you can speak with impact. It's just a matter of frameworks, some core rules, not formulas, not scripts. I'm not the least bit interested in producing a range of cat-style robots. God, wouldn't that be boring?
Back to the AI conversations.
Totes.
Yep.
And in fact, the frameworks are just as powerful for introverts who are really quiet, softly spoken, as they are for extroverts who have all of the things to say in all of the ways, all of the time. So that's what we cover in the workshop series. So if people are interested, they can just head over to Impactful Presenters and they'll find all the details.
And it is a really fantastic piece of work, having done that and also some other things with you. I find that I've never been. It's probably a bit bold. It's been a long time since I've been nervous to stand on a stage, and I do take great delight in creating stages for others to stand on. Which, of course, is a bit of a cop-out because it means that you don't necessarily stand on your own stage, which I did earlier this year, and it was interesting.
You were a bit nervous?
I was, but what I find is that once I got the unit right out the way, it was fine. So standing on my own stage, I was initially nervous. Once I got going, I was fine. Of course, partly using the frameworks that you teach. Not partly, very much using the frameworks, if I'm being honest. But the interesting thing about it is that I get more nervous when I'm creating spaces for other people.
Yeah, right.
If I'm introducing other people, because I feel like I'm going to let them down. Or if it's just me and I screw it up, then it's just me. And it doesn't really matter because I screwed it up. I have full responsibility for that. But creating those spaces for other people is really where I tend to be a little bit nervous.
Yeah, right.
But as an extrovert, no kidding, what I do tend to do is I went down a road of needing to say all of the things about that whole, if I don't tell everybody all of the things, I need to tell the whole story. And that's one of the things I found, and I still struggle with, is I always feel if I don't tell the whole story, I don't give people the context so they can then explain, so they then understand, so they can then do this, I feel like I haven't done my job properly. And that's been very interesting, to coming back to those 3 points, speaking off the sticky notes, doing those things, being able to rearrange things. And that's what I've really taken away from, obviously, as I've got to know you better, is that thing. And that, to remember, I am not a racing squirrel.
No, you're not a racing squirrel.
And that speaking like a whale is too much, but somewhere in between is important, because one of the things which I am constantly sharing with people, and which I think we forget, is that if you are speaking particularly with an adult audience who has a little bit of the knowledge that perhaps that you have, if you don't give them space, adults can't take that new thing and hang it on something they already know.
Correct.
So if you don't have those pauses that sound like too much, then they don't have a chance to work through what you're saying, and you lose them. And again, that was something which was really reinforced with the work that you do, is that whole, it's okay, you don't have to use all of the things, and that coming out of the end of a presentation or a workshop with that whole, you'll need to watch the recording to get the rest, or, oh my God, I felt like I've just been standing under a fire hose drinking all of I can. It doesn't work.
No. And
not to speak with impact.
No, and I remember the conversation that we had months ago where you delivered a webinar, and it was a webinar that you had delivered many times before, but you went into this one differently. You went in this one with a different intention, and you scaled back on most of the content. You delivered only a couple of the key messages. You used repetition rather than filling in the entire 60 minutes. And the comment at the time, and I distinctly remember it, you literally went, whoa, that was the best webinar I've ever run. And you still had 100% of attendees still on the call at the very end. The questions were going off. and people went, that was amazing. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons for it. And the reason I'm a big one for not overloading your audience is we're already overloaded.
Yes.
We walk into any new listening environment already full. So we're already, like that picture of putting a glass on the bench and then continuing to fill it up and then continuing to fill it up even when it's already full. Yeah. That's how it is with our brains. Now, yes, our minds have an endless capacity, but it's actually not endless. And when we're already thinking about the next job, picking up the kids, what's for dinner, whether you remembered to put the permission slip in Johnny's lunchbox, all of that stuff, we're already full. And so if you want to be impactful, then the best bet you have is to give less. Because when you give less, your listener goes, oh, I understand what Jackie's talking about now, rather than just feeling like they've been, slapped around with a fire hose. And they go, oh, yeah, there was that Jackie woman. She was interesting. I think she was talking about this. There's a completely different feeling when you've landed a message as distinct to blasted a message, and it's not volume. Edutainment.
That was great. I really enjoyed that. What do I do with it?
What do I do with that? And from as a business owner, what do you do with that next? And that was really interesting about that. I remember the presentation you're talking about. I was actually doing that when I was into Entrepreneur Fest, which is the entrepreneurial week, which happens in November, and it was last year. And the way I went into that thinking, okay, I'll just try this a different way because I know what it feels like to do it that way, and I know the impact it has that way, and let's see what happens if I try it a different way. I walked away thinking, oh, my God, how on earth have I actually done what they wanted me to do? I messed out all this stuff. I've just lily pondered across, bouncy, across the concepts rather than going deep, and 2.5 hours into a webinar, we'd cover the content. We had space for it's still going at hour 3 and at hour 3 1/4. I had to cut it off because people had other webinars to go to. And as you say, there was everybody was there except for one person who I knew had to leave early, who actually was one of my network who came just in case nobody else did. So there was 139 people in the room, which is a reasonably large webinar. And again, a different skill set to keep all of those people engaged. And we're not going to cover that today. Maybe we can get you back another time. Sure.
But the interesting thing about that was there's the number of connections that happened. My LinkedIn went ping, 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 ping with people wanting to connect. How else can we learn from you? What else can we do? So when you're talking about presenting in that space, that was digitally online, but what the purpose really is as small business owners is to become known for the something that you want to become known for.
Yeah, and build your profile.
The mark of a good program or a mark of a good presentation is that, can I learn with you? Can I connect with you? You want people to come to you and ask about what's next.
Correct.
How do we continue with that? And then I had 17 people from memory tip into a paid course, a paid workshop.
Perfect.
Which is interesting. So it was a for free thing, but these are my ideal audience and you got a chance to tip into. So that speaking with impact is so important in that space because it can turn into sales without going, buy my stuff.
Correct. Another one of my alumni, I'm trying to remember her exact words, but it went along the lines of, like, she had the opportunity to inform some politicians on some post-COVID policy. And she said to me, Kat, your words were echoing in my mind. I wanted to tell them all of the things. I wanted to tell them how they'd completely and utterly stuffed up. But instead I thought, no, I'm gonna use what I've learned. And I was really clear. I was really succinct. I said far less than I ever would. And she said, and it was impactful. The politician said, got it. I completely understand. I'm going to do something about that. And she said, so I think that's why your program is called Impactful Presenters, not confident but rambly and all over the shop presenters.
Yeah. Well, you
Because
take
it's not
the
about just the
confident family
confidence.
all over the shop and put them into a system, and that's how I was so benefited from it so much.
Well, and that's it. Like I think some of my favourite clients have been the really confident ones who go, "Oh, I don't get nervous, but I know I'm not landing my message." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know you're not landing your message because you're trying to squeeze too much in, and you also think that your message is more than what it is." And 9 times out of 10, your message is a scratch of 1% of what you think it is.
Yeah. And I think it will be different. It's like taking a great big tool bag into things. Sometimes you use the hammer, sometimes you use the spanner, sometimes you use the ratchet, and you can grab the right tool, pair it with the right brag bag story to then create that piece of impact that you have.
Correct. I mean, speaking is just another form of communication. It's a pretty powerful form of communication because it's the one form of communication where you really get to engage all of the senses. You know, like there's eye contact, there's a visceral feeling, there's a kinesthetic approach, there's the auditory, there's the eyes, and you get an instinct as well. So speaking is really powerful compared to a written communication or just visual. We think then that we have to grab all of that opportunity and smash it all in. But actually the real power comes in claiming our space and just giving enough to almost invite or generate desire for the next conversation. It's not about everything else.
Yeah. And that's not about a sales pitch
No,
or a
that's
hook
just
or something
life.
deceptive. It's about, actually, this person's who I want to connect with. And you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's perfectly fine. As you said earlier, I don't want to work with numpties. That's why I work for myself.
Correct.
Now, do you think that translates into video as well? Or is that a whole nother saga from standing on a stage to working in video?
Oh, it's a different medium, but you can still generate that same kind of impact and rapport. With video, you need to be a bit more animated because you don't have the same level of kinesthetic impact that you have on a stage. You don't have the dim lights or whatever it is. But on a video, you can connect. And in fact, what I love about COVID and post-COVID is that my entire business exists because we got really good at delivering information online. We actually stopped thinking we needed to be in the same room. In fact, I had a virtual drink with a girlfriend of mine last night who lives in South Australia. We're sitting there going, oh my goodness, why didn't we do this before? Like, why did we need to think that we needed to be in the same room? But it's the same with video. You can talk, you can engage, you can present to a virtual or a video audience powerfully. You just need to animate yourself a little bit more because you got it. It's like a TV screen, right? You've just got to get their attention a bit more and hold it a bit differently.
Awesome. All right, we're going to grab a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to learn some tips and tricks and Cat's advice on if we want to show up in business, if we want to show up authentically and have that impact. What are those minimum things that we need to do which can really, really make a difference? So as well as Women in Business, I have a membership, which is just one of my favorite things to do in the world, where we have a group of women and a few men, mostly women, who come together and assist each other within a community to become leaders within their space. So if you'd like to join us, our membership opens soon. We've got a wait list. I'd love to see you come on board. You can either pop across and join our Facebook group, which is Amplify Your Audience. There'll be a link below. And if you'd like to join the membership, we also have a bit of a wait list. We only open just 3 times a year. So the wait list for that is currently running, and I'd love you to pop over to the Arkamari website, which is www.arkamari, and I'll spell it, arcamorai.com.au. There'll be a button right there on my homepage, and it'll say join the waitlist, and then we'll get you in that sequence, and you'll know immediately that that opens again. Okay, and welcome back. Here we are for the last wind down, and this is where the juicy stuff is. As you may have come to the conclusion already, Cat is this huge wealth of knowledge when it comes to turning up, speaking with impact and authenticity in a space. And the reason this is so important for us as business owners, particularly women business owners, is I have a habit of compromising. You sort of kind of feel out of your depth. Even as an extrovert, I go, oh, crumbs. I walk into a large room and go, oh, great, the bar's over there. So you zoodle across and you grab a drink and you think, okay, now I really should go into, oh, there's someone I know. Excellent. So you go and clump as opposed to perhaps coming into a conversation or finding a way that you can engage with somebody who you perhaps don't know in a way that makes you feel confident and like you know what you're doing, like you can be there, not giving yourself permission because you apparently moved past that, but so that you could actually turn up with share in a way that doesn't feel like you're showing your knickers. So cat no knickers. We are going to, if someone's in that situation, so they're perhaps not standing on stage, but they're going into a networking environment where they don't know what comes next. They're having to perhaps sell their business or feel like they need to sell what they do for the first time. What would your advice be there?
Well, make sure you're wearing your knickers.
Knickers have got it. Yep, good to, knickers are good to go.
Make sure they're comfortable too, because
comfy
yeah.
knickers. Tick, got it.
Yeah. Having to wriggle around all night with your bum munchers just sucks, right? So, look, I have a confession. I hate those kind of networking events. I really do, because there is that whole, I am also confronted by that whole notion of walk into a room of people you don't know and start doing your stick, start doing the dog and pony show. And because that's what it feels like, right? It feels like you're doing the dog and pony show. So you got to get over that because you can't build a business without networking, to be perfectly frank, and you need to show up and you need to meet new people and you need to be able to tell your story. Having a version of your Earn the Right is a really powerful way to introduce yourself at a networking function. And I have been using that. In fact, I've just started circulating again in face-to-face networking environments, and it works a treat, because particularly when you articulate that, the who you work with and the problem that you're solving, and you do it with a bit of humour or style. I work with business owners and community leaders who ramble, think out loud, talk in circles. People are laughing by then. And then so I can then lead in. And when, and people say, but I don't have anything as exciting as that. I'm an accountant and I work with business owners to help them understand how to not get into trouble and to keep as much money as possible in their bank accounts. Like, we can do this for,
poor accountants, we can do that. Such a hard rap.
I know. Well, and I was married to an accountant, and I worked with many accountants. I've been around accountants for long enough to know that they're actually delightful people. So are lawyers. So are lawyers too, by the way. So
just throwing that out there, yeah.
The reason that you need to have your Earn the Right is because it's not just the what you do, it's those brag bag stories that you can then bring into that introduction. The other thing too about a networking function where you kind of don't really want to sell yourself is to come in with actually I want to say with Stephen Covey's second habit, actually. Stephen Covey was the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and habit number 2 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. So go in asking questions that will help you then link into your Earn the Right or what it is that you do. You're not asking questions like, how's the weather? Where did you go for your last holiday? Like, you're setting up those questions so you can then say, interesting, that's exactly the kind of person that I help, blah, 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 blah. I think too, the other thing is avoid the temptation to just hang out with the people that you already know or just head to the bar. Yeah. Find excuses to have conversation with new people. I often, before I walk into a function like that, I'll often sit in the car and just ask myself, okay, what's my intention for this evening? My intention might be that I want to help somebody. My intention might be that I want to meet 3 new people. My intention might be I just want to go softly this time. But getting clear on that intention often helps, rather than walking and going, oh, far out, here we go again. Here's another networking function that I've got to do. When's it going to be over?
So I'm just going to edit this bit out. I just had a look at that and realised that it's not doing your wiggly thing at this end anymore. But it says it's recording, so it should be fine.
Okay.
I'm getting in the corner, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's fine here.
Okay, good, cool. Maybe that's just I just didn't notice it before. Sorry, I'll chop that bit out. Obviously, where was I going to go with that? Yeah, the interesting thing I find when I walk into that environment, as you say, setting your intention for being there. One of my brag bag stories is that I remember years ago I went to a networking event and I'm standing at the top. Now we've got the networking was down a whole bunch of stairs in the basement of a very funky sort of kind of place. And I was standing at the top and I was running a bit late, so I thought before I run in like going, I will just stop, breathe. Okay, what am I here to do? Because one of the things which I found is it's easy to clump. I knew I was going to know people in the room. I needed to do something different. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs and there is a gentleman arrived beside me and he stepped next to me and he said to me, oh, are you new? And I went, no, not so much, but I've had a really busy day, so I'm just collecting my thoughts. He goes, oh, you seem nervous. I'm thinking, well, no, actually I'm not, but thank you, archetypal gentleman who happened to work in finance. Not surprising. You could have picked him. He's a mortgage broker. You picked him a mile off. Anyway, not to be cliche about it, but. And I said to him, yep, no. He goes, oh, well, would you like some tips? And I thought, well, I'm always interested. But okay, it would have been 15 years ago. So
okay,
yeah. So it was like, I said sure, thinking whatever, and he's going, well, you see these pens, and he holds up a green and a pink highlighter that were in his pocket, and he said, so there's going to be about 80 people here, and we're going to the event will be run for about 2 hours, so you've got 120 minutes. And I'm thinking, yeah, less going to the bar time, but okay. And he goes, so what you need to do is that gives you approximately, 2 minutes per person. And
I don't like where this is going, Jackie.
No. And he said to me, okay, so what you need to do is you need to go there, introduce yourself, give them your business card. Did you bring your business cards? Yes, I have my business cards. He goes, okay, so this is what happens now. So you get their business cards, you have a quick chat with them. If you want to follow up with them, you can mark them in green and when you put them in your pocket. If you don't want to follow up with them, mark them in pink, put them in your pocket. Because then you can just throw those cards away later. But don't do it in the room because it looks rude. And I'm thinking,
yeah, because it looks rude. It looks rude. That's the problem.
It is rude. But he had this plan. It was to get absolutely everybody to work out who we could who could warm follow-up call with. Yeah. I'm thinking, how do you even know these are your people? But sure enough, I said, oh, thanks. What do you do? Went downstairs. We're standing in the room. I grabbed my glass of wine and we're sitting there, I was chatting to somebody. And sure enough, I could see him making his way over. I'm thinking, no, you must have been joking. Sure enough, he sat there and he's come across to the group and he's introduced himself to the person here. And the person here, he looked at me, goes, oh, we've met. And he moved on. And he collected the business cards. And I saw him as he walked away, he marked them and he moved on to the next group. It was genuinely the way he was approaching the networking.
And look, maybe that worked for him because maybe he, in a high sales environment, he was literally there generating leads. I would argue, and this goes back to everything that we were saying right at the top of this conversation around AI, the competitive advantage will come from connection. The competitive advantage will come from relationships. And if you're treating everybody that you meet as simply a lead that goes into your file that you're going to call up and pitch them a product, then all you're doing is transacting and you're not building a relationship. But if you go in with a genuine interest to go, let me learn from you. Let me understand your point of view, your worldview, how you see the world. Maybe you just go in with a genuine curiosity for people. Then, it's certainly a lot more fun that way. It's a lot more fun that way.
And the other thing I think we forget when we're doing that is you don't necessarily sell to the network you're standing in front of. You sell through them.
Correct.
If they get a chance to have a relationship, you have a chance to have just even that quick impact on them. They go, oh, that was useful, or thanks so much for that. Hadn't thought of that. Different perspective. Something that makes you more than the wallpaper of the event.
Correct.
That's got to be a better space. And you cannot do that with AI.
And
you
look,
cannot do that as a robotic response.
I still see people that I first met in Brisbane 25 years later, like not because we've stayed in touch, but because the business community of Brisbane is like that. Yeah. Just like the business community of any city, to be perfectly honest, is like that. And my reputation through buckets of jobs and buckets of businesses, my reputation is solid as somebody who is kind, as someone who is generous, as someone who is genuinely interested. And that for me will be far more valuable than anyone remembering my brand name at any particular time. Invest in, I was going to say invest in relationships, but invest in your own authenticity, as in being really congruent in who you are and expressing that whenever you can. Not quirky, not different, none of that. Just you. Just be you, and everyone will remember you, and that's what counts.
Because as small business owners, it's irrespective of the logo or the clever business name or the whatever it is, particularly as women small business owners, we are our brand.
Totally.
It is, and you can't run around trying to be somebody else. And I think this is I guess my trick for imposter syndrome is if I turn up as me, I can't possibly be an imposter because I'm not trying to be anybody else. So you have to be you. You can't be anything else.
That's awesome. I like that. I really like that framing.
So on that, and the other thing is I've got this lovely slide that I love to use at the end of the presentations that I do, particularly around this subject, which is, the Linus, pig pit Linus sort of kind of thing from Snoopy, which says, be you, the world will adjust.
Correct. You, everyone else is taken.
Exactly right. So when we're in that space, if the people listening here are going, yep, cool, but that seems, even though you've only just squidgy scratched the surface on this, even though you've only just touched on the wealth of knowledge that you have to share on this in this space, if they could just do one thing as we finish, just one thing today or tomorrow, what would you recommend that is, Kat?
Dig up 3 to 5 brag bag stories. Dig up 3 to 5 stories from your past that point to or illustrate why you do what you do and how it is that you're good at it. Now, I don't mean the best at it. I don't mean the winner at it. It's just what's informed your journey to this point. And just pull out those 5 stories and just get clear on what happened in that scenario, whether it's singing the national anthem when you were debating, whether it's having somebody use your sound bites, whether it's why you made a decision to do what it is that you do, whether it's the decision that you made to run your own business instead of working for someone else. Just whatever, just find 3 to 5 stories and start using them in your introductions. Not all of them, just 1 or 2. Or use them in your conversations. That reminds me of a time when, or it's a bit like this when, and you've got stories, from everywhere. So just get present to those brag bag stories that point to who you are, why you are who you are, and why you do what you do. And it'll help boost your own confidence, but it will also help you connect with people when you're explaining who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. I've reminded me of so many things as we've been chatting. I'm thinking, which is just fantastic. And that's that thing is that the great thing about this is, of course, it turns into a podcast as well. So I can listen to it again and again and again.
Over and over again.
Over and over again. The transcription, we can look, we can read, we can look, we can watch. It's going to be awesome. So for those of you who want to get in contact with Kat, I have all of her details, and I'll pop them into the footer of both the radio show when it goes live and also the Women in Business podcast, which will also sit on the station. We'll have all of the links. We'll have everything there. So don't feel that if you failed to write down impactfulpresenters.com written correctly with the right spelling, that all is over and you'll never, ever be able to contact Kat again. I would suggest reach out on LinkedIn, Watch what she's got. So much information sitting on Facebook pages, in Facebook groups, on Instagram reels, on reels. They're just so generous with your knowledge, Kat. It's just fabulous to have you as part of our Australian business community. I think you add incredible value to what you do.
Thank you, Jackie.
And hopefully you enjoyed all of that. And we will get back to, I think we go into music again now, which will be all kinds of awesome. Who knows what they've programmed for music-wise after this, but, that's radio for you.
Well, if they're following my theme, it'll be some fantastic 80s. So wishing you a nice 80s music break.
We will request the 80s to follow what you're saying. Thank you so much, Kat. I look forward to catching up with you again.
Thanks, Jackie.